Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Our Stoney Acres. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about planting potatoes, and we're actually going to take you out in the garden and plant a few potatoes today. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. Before we get started, I would love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you click the notification bell so that you get notice every time we release new videos. And do me a favor, we're just getting started over on Instagram. I would love it if you would go follow us over there as well. So there's a link down in the description for that. Okay, so let's talk about planting potatoes and the process and a few things about it. So we're going to start out here in the shade where it's a little cooler and talk about potatoes. So first off, potatoes are one of the few plants that we put in the garden that we don't actually plant from a seed. Instead, we plant a potato. Okay, so this is a certified disease-free potato that I bought from one of our local nurseries, and that is probably the best way to go. Make sure that it's certified disease-free, and that will, assure that you don't spread any diseases into your garden. And so we like to do that. And basically, planting a potato is super simple. You're just going to put this potato in the ground, okay, about 6 inches deep, and away you go. But there are a few things that can minorly complicate it, so we'll talk about those really quick and go through those. So the first thing is, a lot of people will ask, can I plant the potatoes that I get from the grocery store? And technically, the answer to that question is yes, you can. But there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't. Number one, you don't know where that potato's come from, okay? You don't know that it's been certified disease-free, and you could very easily be spreading something into your garden, which we definitely don't want. The second thing is, potatoes need to sprout in order for them to grow the plant, and grocery store potatoes, for the most part, have been treated with a gas that prevents them from sprouting, and it takes a long time for that gas to wear off, okay? So we want them to be sprouting fairly quickly and up and growing, and we don't want to wait. So it's really better for you to use those nursery bought or buy them online, but make sure they're certified disease-free, and that is really the best way to go, okay? And if you can find it, a local nursery or a farm store or something like that is probably going to be a much better deal than buying it online. There's a lot of great online sellers, but they have to ship them and all kinds of stuff, and so it's super expensive, sometimes between $5 to $10 a pound. These guys I paid 99 cents a pound for, and they're certified and the whole shebang. So it is a good idea to try and find a local source if you can, because that's definitely a cheaper way to go about it. There are a couple of things that you can do that don't really complicate potato planting, but a couple of things that you can do but don't have to do. Okay, so let's talk about those. And the first one is chitting your potatoes. Okay, so chitting, spelled C-H-I-T-T-I-N-G, is the process of letting your potatoes sprout. So if you look at this potato, you can see how there's sprouts that are coming out of the eyes, and that is called chitting. This one hasn't been chitted yet, and you can see it's just barely got one little sprout that's starting, okay? So the advantage of chitting is that the plants will get up and growing a little bit faster. So especially if you have a short season, it's probably not a bad idea to do that. And the way you chit your potatoes is to leave them out for 3 or 4 weeks in a warm place. So like maybe bring them in the house, somewhere like that, put them on a counter, basement floor, something like that, somewhere warm, and that will cause them to start sprouting, okay? But this potato and this potato are both going to grow just fine, and you don't have to chit your potatoes. A lot of years I don't. This year I'm a little bit late getting my potatoes from the local farm store, and so they were already chitted. But a lot of years I don't even bother with this, and so you really don't need to worry about it unless you want to, or if you are worried about a short season or something like that, then it can definitely help, okay? The other thing that you can do is cutting your seed potatoes, okay? So if you look at this potato, well, let's look at this one really closely here. You can see that there are several different eyes, probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 different eyes on this potato where we have sprouts coming, okay? If we were to cut this potato in half, as long as we make sure that both sides have eyes on them, both will grow. And so that gives us more plants. I will do this quite often because we don't have a lot of disease problems in our area. But if you live in an area that has soil-borne disease problems that affect potatoes, it may not be a good idea. So I actually have filmed an entire video on cutting seed potatoes, and it's just a short one. It's about 5 minutes long. I'm going to link it right up here, and you guys can go check that one out. If you're interested in actually cutting the potatoes, you can learn more there. But honestly, again, you don't have to do that. There's really no need. You can just plant the potato straight into the ground. So cutting a seed potato is something you can do, but you don't have to do. So now let's talk about when we are going to be planting our potatoes. Potatoes like to get started in the cool time of the year, and so we actually have a pretty big window of time when we can start planting. So we could actually start planting about 6 weeks before your last frost in the spring, and you can go all the way to about 4 weeks afterwards, okay? It all kind of depends on how long your growing season is and if you want to have space for other things later on. Most potatoes take somewhere between 90 to 120 days to mature, and so you can kind of just time it out and see what you think. I kind of like to hit somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks before my first frost for the most part. I will put a few in early in a cold frame, but for the most part, I try to hit that kind of 3 to 4 week range. It seems to work pretty good in our area. Another important part of growing potatoes is sunlight. So the bed that you choose to plant your potatoes in needs to get at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. Preferably a lot more than that. If you can find a bed that's in full sun so that it's getting 10 to 12 hours of sunlight during the summertime, that would be the best. But bare minimum is that kind of 6 to 8 range. It does need quite a bit of sun to grow potatoes. So you want to make sure that you have a sunny bed. And then I always like to loosen up the soil, maybe amend the bed with some compost, and make sure that we have a nice loose soil that gives plenty of space for those potatoes to grow and makes it easier for them to grow. So a good loosened soil with some compost added is also another really good idea. If you're worried about how fertile your soil is, then you could also add some fertilizer if you wanted as well. I'm pretty comfortable that my soil is fertile and it's going to do really well. I amend it with compost every year, and so I usually do not use fertilizer with my potatoes. But if you're worried about it, put in a nice balanced, granular, organic fertilizer, and that will help your potatoes along as well. Let's head out to the garden and actually get some potatoes planted. Okay, so for the trenches that we're going to dig, we actually want to go about 6 inches deep. So I've already got these 2 done. Sometimes I'll do it with a big shovel. Because I'm getting down here and wanted to show you guys, we'll do it today with a trowel. Normally I do it with a bigger shovel, but we're going to dig a nice 6-inch trench that we can then use to plant the potatoes in. And our spacing here is about 12 inches apart, so that will be good for the potatoes. So yeah, I'm just going to dig these and then we'll show you what else. I mentioned earlier that we want to go 4 to 6 inches deep, and I usually go with a full 6 inches because I like to put a little compost in the bottom of this trench. I do that just to add a little more nutrients to the trench, and it also will help to keep that soil nice and loose down there so that the potatoes have that space to grow. So I'll do that as well, add maybe an inch or 2 of compost to each of the trenches so that we've got a little additional nutrition down there. Okay, so now we've got our trenches dug and we are going to get started with planting the potatoes. Obviously I'm not going to let you guys or make you guys watch the whole event, but I did want to cover a couple of things. First off, let's talk about how we're going to plant them. So you're always going to want to plant the potatoes with the eyes up. So as many of the eyes as you can. So for example, this guy, let me actually come closer here so you guys can see it. This one is, see how it's already has chitted? We want to plant it so that this is up. These pointed ends are up. That's the direction that things are going to grow, and so we want those to be up. For spacing, we've got a couple of things that we need to think about. You can choose to space them a little bit further apart, and I have found that you'll get slightly bigger potatoes with more spacing. So that gives the potatoes a little bit more room to grow, And so if you're looking for like baker potatoes, then I would probably do my spacing at about 12 inches, okay? But if you want roasting potatoes or potatoes just for mashed potatoes, you're not worried about getting great big giant ones, then somewhere between 6 to 8 inches of spacing is more than sufficient. So that's what I like to do in these small environments. Of course, if you're out off in a big field, you can do a lot more spacing. So we're going to do these at about 8 inches, and then remember, we're going to plant those with the eyes going up, and if they have chitted, then we're going to plant them with the chitted part up. And again, we're going to go about 6 to 8 inches for this entire bed. So we'll go ahead and get those planted however you want to have them spaced. Then we're just simply going to fill in the trenches and make sure that they're covered up good, and then we are ready to go. So I'll go ahead and get this all filled in, and then we'll probably water these in. We actually had some rain a couple of days ago, so we won't need to water for a day or two. But if your soil is dry, you should water them in right away. That will help things to get off to a good start. And then basically care of potatoes while they're growing is pretty simple. You just need to make sure that they're well watered. They do like to be watered. You don't want them soaking, but they do need to be evenly moist and probably watered quite often, especially as temperatures start to rise and you get more into the summertime. You should probably be watering every 3 or 4 days to make sure that they get the water that they need. And then besides that, you could hill your potatoes if you wanted to. I used to hill my potatoes all the time. So I would build up these big, 12-inch tall hills. The idea behind hilling is the potatoes are actually not part of the root system, they're part of the stems. And so the idea is the more stem there is, the more potatoes will grow. That really for a garden environment isn't all that practical or true. And so I've actually found that planting them close together like this and not really worrying too much about hilling them is fine. And you're going to get just as much production, and you're going to be just fine. So the one thing I will do is once those plants come up, I am going to create just a little bit of a hill, maybe 3 or 4 inches high, to kind of give the plant some support. And the other thing that does is it helps the potatoes that are growing underneath the surface, helps to keep them under the surface, because we don't want them coming out. If they come out and they get exposed to the sun, that's not a good thing. They'll turn green, and green potatoes are mildly poisonous. They get bitter and don't taste good, and so we want to make sure that we keep those potatoes out of the sun. Harvest time comes, depending on the variety, somewhere between 90 to 120 days after you've planted them. Make sure you know on your variety, because that will help you kind of know. But the nice thing about potatoes is they tell you when they're done. The tops start to fall over and die off, and you know that it's time to harvest. And if you're interested, I actually have an entire video on how to harvest potatoes. I'll link that up at the end in the end screen so that you guys can check that out. Just make sure you keep things well watered. A little mulch would be good. That would help also to keep those potatoes covered, and you should be good to go. So potatoes are actually pretty easy plant to grow. One that we really enjoy, probably our second favorite plant to grow in the garden, next to tomatoes, of course. So yeah, great crop for you to grow in your garden. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Also go check us out over on Instagram and follow us there. There's a link down in the description. Now, if you would like to learn more about growing potatoes, I've got a couple of opportunities for you. The first one, of course, is the Gardening Academy. So in the Gardening Academy, we have an entire potato course that you can watch. It's about an hour and a half long and teaches you how to grow potatoes. We also have 2 or 3 other videos that discuss potato growing and help you out there quite a bit. Or if you would like, I actually sell that potato course separately. And so I've included a link to both the Gardening Academy and to that potato course down below. The link to the potato course has a $5 off coupon on it. So if you want to go check that out, you could go watch that video as well. And a great course that I think you'll really enjoy. So I promised a couple of videos here at the end. This one is a little bit more about cutting seed potatoes and some of the information that you need there. And then this one is how to harvest potatoes. So make sure you check both of those out. Okay, my friends, that's all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Everybody have a great week. Happy gardening.